People are always making decisions about my life with ever talking to me. How can you decide where I'm going to live if you've never met me? I've never even met the judge who decided I was never going to see my mother again. These are the voices of the children that we have systematically silenced. This is what they are saying. These are our children. With very little exceptions, the children that we have spoken to have told us that they know that in their abuse, neglect, and dependency proceedings, that there is this person called a judge, and the judge holds meetings. And during these meetings, decisions are made about the child's life. They know this. They know decisions are made about where they're going to live, whether or not they're going to see their parents, whether or not they're going to see their siblings. They also know that they're not involved in those meetings, in the court hearings, in the places where these decisions are being made. So I've been doing child welfare work for over 20 years, and it can be emotionally exhausting. What if I were to tell you that across the country, by and large, attorneys advocate for and judges make decisions in court hearings about things like where a child is going to live, whether or not they're going to be removed from their parents. And they do this without the child being present in that court hearing. If I were to tell you that a major decision was going to be made about your life, that you were going to go to the doctors and the doctor was going to prescribe a medication to you, and you had no input over that. You were not present when the doctor was making that decision. You would be outraged. You wouldn't allow it. Our laws simply don't allow that. So the reality is, however, that this happens routinely with children in abuse and neglect cases. And we've been talking about this for over 20 years. And yet here I stand 20 years later, making the same arguments over again. In this country, we have a long history of a small percentage of people making decisions about everyone with very little input from the people that these decisions impact. The fact that this happens in abuse and neglect and dependency proceedings is egregious. These children have lived this life. They have loved these parents, and they're being torn apart by the system. So why is this happening? Why are we still struggling with this question about whether or not children should be at their court hearings? And I'm going to tell you why. Because it's hard. Right? Because it's hard to make room for children in a courtroom where we're used to only having adults present. It is hard to discuss and decide how we're going to get children to and from the court hearings. So it is hard for us to actually make this happen. You know what else is hard? Being in foster care and having these decisions about where we're going to live, about whether or not the child is going to see their parent, made for them without them being present. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here talking about how to do this. You know how to do this. We have trained on it. We have written articles about it. I'll give you some tips towards the end about some ideas about how to do it. But what needs to happen, and the central focus that I want you to take away from this today, is that we need to recognize that it is not just our professional duty, but it is our personal duty. that when we make best interest arguments, when we make best interest decisions, that we must have children present in the room. And in fact, we are not fulfilling our personal or professional duty if we don't have those children in the room. So we talk about this notion of justice when we talk about these kinds of cases. But is it really justice when the person that calls us to that justice, this child, when they're not even present, when they're not even there? And are we really understanding the unique responsibility that we have to value this child if the child is not present? And I would argue that we're really not fulfilling these obligations that we have, both personally and professionally, if the child is not present. So we routinely sort of gloss over their lack of presence. So when we start our court hearing, the child is not there and we gloss over it. What we say to justify this is that we need to protect our children. We need to protect them from what they're going to hear. We feel good about that, right? So we feel good that we're their protectors. There are going to be things that they shouldn't be hearing in these court hearings. But is this really true? Is it really protecting them when they are not actively involved in the decision-making that is going on? So we've asked children about this. So when we say that we're protecting them, you know what they say? They say you're actually protecting yourselves from being uncomfortable. We have lived this life. We know what has happened in our homes. Why do you think you know better than we do? We have sat through this. We know what happens. We have seen our parents. What we do want is we want to see that the adults who are in the room, they are talking about what is happening in our home. They are actively trying to make our lives safer. Another thing that we talk about is well, if we have a child present, that the child is going to cry or get upset. When we tell this to children, they say, yeah, we might do that. These cases are emotional, and that's okay. You're adults, handle it. You should know how to handle this. You have parents all the time that are present during these court hearings, and they cry, they get upset, they scream, they yell, and we would never think about holding a court hearing without a parent present. Yet we do it all the time to these young children. That's what they would tell us. We talk about school. So we talk about sort of logistics. So you have school, we feel good about this. We say our children's education is important to us. That if they're present at their court hearings, they're going to miss school. You know what they say when we tell them that? They say, we're not paying attention during school anyway. We know what is happening in the court hearing, that there are court hearings going on. You're making these decisions about my life. I'm not concerned about my routine. I'm not concerned about school. This is the place where decisions are being made. I want to be there. We talk about transportation, that it's hard getting children to and from their court hearings. When we talk to children about that, they say, you know what? You get me to school, you get me to therapy, you get me to any evaluation that you want. Figure it out. Be creative. There are family, relatives, foster parents, many ways to figure out the transportation. It should not be an issue to get a child to a court hearing. We say these hearings are going to be longer. We have enough on our court calendar. We only have 15 minutes for our court cases. How can we do that with children present? You know what they say? Yeah, you're right. They are going to be longer. I do want to talk to the judge. I do want the judge to be prepared to ask me questions. I want to be able to ask questions. They say the small amount of time that it's going to take you longer than if I was not there should be worth it to you to make my life safer. We asked the question about young children. Should young children be present at court hearings. Surely that's not useful. What can they contribute? So when we talk to judges, we routinely hear that just seeing young people at the court hearing is impactful on them. It impacts their decision making. They see them, can they walk? Can they talk? How are they interacting with the people in the courtroom who are closest to them? Judges also say that it puts a face to a name. Everyone in that courtroom knows that we're talking about a real child. That real child is present. It brings everything to life to have that child present. So just a couple reminders to conclude about how to make this work so that it's meaningful for the children. Prepare. There isn't really anything that is going to happen during the court hearing that the attorneys and the social worker don't know is going to happen. We need to prepare the child for coming into court. Child's attorney can be the one that prepares a child, social worker, foster parent, even a therapist can be involved in that kind of preparation. Then during the court hearing, check in with the child. How is the child doing? What do we do with other witnesses that need a break or a recess? We give them one so we can do the same thing for that child. Debrief. So afterwards, it's almost more important than preparation. Giving the child the opportunity after the court hearing to ask questions of their attorney, social worker, so they can process what has happened during that court hearing. Preparing judges. The American Bar Association has produced bench cards, age appropriate for judges, so that they know questions to ask and how to speak to children. So preparing judges is important. Scheduling. So there are winter holidays, summer holidays, spring break. There are many opportunities when children are not in school to schedule these court hearings. Schedule the court hearings towards the end of the day. So there are many ways so that having children there is not difficult in terms of scheduling. Transportation, same thing. Foster parents, relatives, there are many options for children. Public transportation to get the child to and from the court hearing. That should never be an excuse for not having a child present at their court hearings. So what really needs to happen is this mindset change. We really need to value having the person who we're talking about present in front of us. And once we recognize that better decisions and better outcomes come out when children are present, then any barrier that we put up to having children present, we will be able to address. So it's that mindset change. So I want to read a quote from one of the magistrates in my courtroom who regularly has children of all ages present before her. I know from my own personal life, as well as experiences of friends and family, that a personal connection is a priceless, intangible thing that can make an immeasurable difference in life. It can be the difference between feeling grounded and feeling you have nothing to lose. These kids do not have that foundation, support, or network that they deserve. I want to be able to look into their faces, their expression, their eyes, and let them know that one more person is listening. I want to assess their happiness, health, progress, and give them an opportunity to tell me if they need or want something that they don't have or believe that they're entitled to. I want to encourage them, discourage them, explain, talk, answer questions, whatever I think that they may need that day, in the hopes that they can recognize that although their circumstances are not perfect, that they are safe and they have a lot of people in their corner. I want them to know that I'm truly invested in their happiness and success. And meeting in court is really the only way to convey that message to them. And receiving that message, I hope, will make the experience better and more meaningful for our children. There's one thing that I leave you with. I hope that it is that while we do have the power to improve the lives of our children, we cannot and should not do that without them. They have a saying, nothing about us without us. We have a duty to honor that.